Two women finished a morning shift at a supermarket, bought box lunches, and walked up a low wooded hill behind a housing estate to pick wild ferns. They carried nothing worth stealing, and nothing was taken from them. When they were found 2 days later, their rucksacks were still packed, lunchboxes emptied, purses untouched, the ferns they had gathered that morning still inside. But folded small in the pocket of the older woman's jeans was a paper receipt from the supermarket where they both worked, printed 2 days earlier. Someone had written on it in pencil 3 short lines in plain, hurried Japanese. "I'm being followed. Please help me. This man is a bad man." The handwriting was hers. The pencil was never found, and in 47 years, no investigator has ever been able to establish when she wrote those words. Nagaokakyo sits between Kyoto and Osaka, 20 minutes by train from either. In 1979, it was a commuter town in the middle of becoming a suburb. Rice fields were turning into housing blocks, concrete walls and tiled roofs spread outward year after year until they ran up against the western hills and stopped. Behind the last row of houses, the ground rises straight into bamboo. That hill is barely 200 meters high. It isn't wilderness, it's a working grove, cut and thinned for generations, laced with narrow earth trails that families had used for as long as anyone could remember. And every spring, those trails filled up. Late May is the season for warabi, Bracken fern, a wild vegetable that has been eaten in Japan for centuries. You climb up, you crouch in the undergrowth, you snap off the young curled shoots, and you carry them home in a basket. Mothers took their children. Retired couples made a morning of it. It was as ordinary as picking blackberries at the end of a lane. The 2 women who went up that Wednesday were colleagues, not relatives. One was 43, one was 32. They worked part-time at the same supermarket near the station, and the older woman was well liked there, the sort of person other staff went to. They had both done this before. That is the part worth holding on to. Nothing about that morning was unusual to them. Their shift ended before noon. They bought box lunches at the store, rode their bicycles to the edge of town, and left them at the foot of the trail near a small temple. By the accounts that have circulated locally, they started up shortly after 11. Both of them ate their lunches on the hill. We know that because of what came later. The medical examination placed both deaths within about an hour of that meal, sometime between midday and 2:30 in the afternoon. So there is a window of roughly 2.5 hours in which 2 women, a few minutes' walk from a suburb of 80,000 people, on a sunlit spring Wednesday, in a grove that other people were also using that season, were attacked and killed. Nobody heard anything that led anywhere. The younger woman was expected at her child's daycare that afternoon. She never came. That is what began the alarm. By evening, neither woman had returned home, and their families started calling. A search went out that night into a hillside neither of them had any reason to still be on. They were not found on the 24th. On the morning of the 25th, a much larger party went up. Police brought dogs. They worked the slopes with poles, beating through undergrowth that closes over a trail within a single season. Near the top, the dogs alerted. Both women were found close to the summit, a short distance apart, and here is the detail that reshaped the case in the first hour. Everything they owned was still there. 2 rucksacks, 2 empty lunchboxes, 2 purses, the bracken they had cut that morning. Robbery was off the table before the day ended. One woman had been strangled, the other had been stabbed, and a kitchen knife was still there when she was found. The older woman had also been sexually assaulted. Biological material recovered from her indicated blood type O, and for the next 15 years, that letter would be the closest thing Kyoto police had to a face. Then came the pocket. In the older woman's jeans, crumpled into a small wad, was a till receipt from her own workplace, dated the 21st of May, 2 days before she died. On the paper, in pencil, someone had written 3 short phrases. "I'm being followed. Please help me. This man is a bad man." It is worth pausing on how that reads in the original. It is not literary, it is not composed. The phrasing is bare and slightly broken, partly in katakana, the kind of writing a person produces when they are not thinking about grammar. It reads like something written fast for a stranger, meant to be understood at a glance. Handwriting examination confirmed it was hers. And that is where the case stops making sense in a clean way, because a message like that implies a sequence. You notice someone, you decide you cannot get away from them, you find paper, you find something to write with, and you write because you cannot call for help any other way. Every step in that sequence takes time, and every step takes calm. But the writing tool was never recovered, not on either woman, not in either rucksack, not at the scene. Investigators searching the ground afterwards turned up one thing, the snapped-off tip of a pencil lead, a broken point, and nothing it had come from. So what does that leave? A woman carrying a 2-day-old receipt in her pocket, which is ordinary, something she wrote with and did not keep, which is not, and a message addressed to nobody in particular, which never reached anyone in time. She wrote it. Someone else, apparently, ended up holding what she wrote it with. Kyoto Prefectural Police built the case around the only 3 things they had: the manner of the attack, the blood type, and the writing. The knife was traced. It was a mass-produced kitchen model sold through channels too wide to narrow to a buyer, and it carried no usable fingerprints. That single item was the entire physical yield of the scene. So the investigation went outward instead, into people. Officers pulled in local men with records, men with reputations, men who had been seen on or near the slopes. They checked, in the end, 207 alibis. Some of those checks were quick. Some ran for weeks. None of them held anyone. In August, 3 months on, police released a composite sketch. It showed a man in his 40s who had reportedly been on the hill about a week before the killings, speaking to people who had come up to gather wild vegetables. Someone striking up conversation on a public path is not a crime, and police were careful about how they framed him. He was a man they wanted to identify. He was never identified. Not in 1979, not in the 15 years that followed. Whoever he was, he did not come forward, and nobody who had met him could put a name to him. 5 years later, in the same city, another woman was killed in an unsolved attack. Locals connected the two. Police never established a link between them, and no evidence has ever tied them together. The Nagaokakyo file stayed open and stayed empty. Strip the case down, and you are left with a set of problems that do not sit comfortably beside each other. Motive is the first. Nothing was stolen from 2 women who were not wealthy and were not carrying anything of value. The assault points one direction. The sheer violence points somewhere less controlled. Neither explanation covers the whole afternoon. The second problem is arithmetic. Two adults, awake, unrestrained, in daylight, on open ground, with an escape route in every direction. Controlling two people at once is hard. It usually means either a weapon shown early, or an attacker who did not begin as a threat, or more than one person. Investigators could never settle which one. Third is the silence. Late May on that hillside was not a private place. Other people picked ferns there that season. The suburb sits directly below. And yet, the useful sightings from the whole afternoon amount to almost nothing. And fourth is the paper. If the older woman knew on the day she died that a man was following her, then she had time to write and no time to run. If she wrote it earlier on some other day, then she had been afraid for a while, carrying a warning in her pocket that she never gave to anyone. Both readings are terrible. They are also mutually exclusive, and the case has never resolved which one is true.
So let's actually weigh those two readings, because the evidence is not evenly balanced between them. Start with the paper itself. The receipt was 2 days old, and it was in her jeans. That tells us she was a person who kept slips of paper in her pockets, which is not remarkable in itself, but it means the receipt was available to her at any moment across those 2 days. It does not date the writing. People have used that detail to argue she wrote the message on the 21st, and it simply does not support the claim. Now put the pencil next to it. Pencils are not things people carry loose in the pocket of their jeans on a fern-picking trip. You have one because you were already doing something with it, or because someone handed it to you. And after she used it, it was gone, while a broken lead tip stayed behind on the ground. To me, that pushes the balance hard toward the day itself. A writing tool that appears once, produces 3 lines, and then vanishes from a scene where nothing else was removed, reads far more like an object that was present in the encounter than like something she had been carrying for 2 days in fear. Then there is the register of the words. Not a diary entry, not a name, not a place, not a description of anyone's face or clothing. Just, "He is behind me, help me, he is bad." That is the vocabulary of a person compressing a warning into the smallest number of strokes she can manage. It is written for someone who will find it, not for herself. Reconstruct it in that order, and the afternoon looks like this. 2 women eat lunch near the top of a hill they have climbed a dozen times. A man is present. At some point, one of them understands what is happening before the other does, and she does the only thing left to a person who cannot outrun a situation and cannot shout for help. She leaves a record. She was not writing to be saved. I think she was writing to be believed. And if that is right, then the most frightening fact in this case is not the violence. It is that a woman on a suburban hillside in broad daylight, 40 minutes from central Kyoto, calculated that a scrap of paper in her pocket was her best remaining option.
The investigation ran for 15 years and never closed on a single person. Under the law as it stood then, that was the limit. On the 24th of May, 1994, the statute of limitations expired, and the case passed permanently out of reach of prosecution. In 2010, Japan abolished the time limit for murder entirely. But the reform did not reach backwards. Cases that had already expired stayed expired. Whoever walked down that hill in May 1979 has been beyond the law for more than 30 years and will remain there. The hill is still there, too, behind the houses. People still climb it in spring. 2 women went up to pick ferns, and one of them, sometime in the last hours of her life, wrote 3 lines with something she did not own, addressed to a stranger she hoped would come. Nobody came, and nobody has ever been able to say what time it was when she wrote them. What do you think happened on that hill?